everybody, and welcome to Inside Quest. We are the Ministry of Travel for your mind. Our goal is to bring on amazing people who can take your intellect to new and distant destinations. And if you're looking to put some foreign stamps in your mental passport, there's no better guest than the man joining us today. He's an author, venture capitalist, and innovator who has disrupted more businesses than hurricanes do flights. A historian by education and technologist by training, he established himself as the go-to authority on innovation over a mind-bogglingly successful career in the travel industry. He began his journey as a travel agent over 40 years ago, making his first booking via telegram. So when he says he's seen a lot of change in his career, you know he means it. Fiercely focused on team building, customer experience, and harnessing the relentless evolution of technology, he has shaped and reshaped the travel industry by personally dismantling outdated business models and replacing them with industry-defining innovations, companies, and technologies. The founding CEO of Travelocity, he began to show his penchant for meta-disruption by transforming Travelocity from a tiny American Airlines side project with 6 employees in a strip mall into a standalone public company with $3 billion in travel sales. Proving that innovation is not the sole domain of young Turks, after roughly 30 years in the industry, he co-founded his next venture, Kayak.com, which was designed from the ground up to disrupt the already disruptive online travel booking industry. He was so successful in building a team and culture of innovation at Kayak that it became one of the dominant players in its space and was ultimately sold to Priceline for $1.8 billion in 2013. So cemented as the travel industry's guru of change, when IBM wanted to see if their game-changing Watson cognitive computing system could also deliver disruption in the airline industry, he was their first call. From that outreach, Wayblazer was born, and he once again stands poised to fundamentally alter the industry he has helped to modernize. And, as if molding one of the largest industries in the world wasn't enough, he has served on the boards of 13 public and private companies, still actively serving on the boards of Wayblazer, Boingo, Smart Destinations, and the Camping and Education Foundation. Additionally, he is a much sought-after speaker and consultant who helps companies all over the world step gracefully into the digital economy. Please help me in welcoming the founder and managing principal of the innovation consultancy On Inc., the inventor of record on several patents, and the author of On Innovation, Terry Jones. Terry, welcome to the show. Thank you so much, man. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for that very kind introduction.
Absolutely. Thank you for having a career that, for somebody like me who is absolutely obsessed with seeing how far things can be pushed and how far we can take innovation, especially having come from the technology field, it's really, really fascinating to see how many times you've been able to do it over and over, but having come from a pretty traditional background growing up at American Airlines. How have you kept, because people would say, I think traditionally it's been said that innovation, genius, passion, all of it is a young man's game, but you've really shown that that isn't the case. How have you stayed fresh? How have you stayed so hungry to learn new things?
I think it's about having a hunger to learn. I mean, we were talking earlier, you listen to audiobooks all the time.
Yes.
I read voraciously. I go to conferences all the time. And, you know, there's a mix of old and new that goes on. I think as you get older, you see things repeat over and over again, and, you know, this next new thing's going to change the world, and you go, nah, maybe it's not. Right. But this one might.
Right.
And let's go jump on this one. So I'm still having fun.
Have you always had a curious mind like that, or do you actively cultivate that?
Well, I don't know. I guess thanks to my mother, I think I was a big reader, and my dad was a madman advertiser, so we had 36 magazines that came to the house.
Wow.
You know, because they give you free magazines. So
right.
I read all these magazines, even Successful Farming and crazy magazines that would come in.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really exciting. And so I got into that, and then, you know, I got my degree in history, and I still read a lot of history, and I'm interested in it. So I just think being exposed to a wide variety of things is the most important way to keep your mind active. And, you know, that's why I'm still standing and doing new things.
It's pretty incredible. So one, that you have such a curious mind and that you've continued to feed it, and that's really exciting. Because I see so many people sort of calcify as their career goes on. The more they learn, the actually more rigid they become intellectually. And you've stayed really dynamic, and being the go-to guy when IBM was looking to bring what is truly a revolution in technology with Watson to the new industry that they would reach out to, I think is pretty dynamic proof of that. What what advice do you have for people at the beginning of their career that are looking at your career, which has just been absolutely incredibly adventurous? And I think giving people a rough timeline of what you did and how that turned very, very entrepreneurial would be incredibly useful.
Well, I think you have to be willing to take risk all the time. And it's a question of how much risk do you take. So I started my career, I got out of college. My college roommate had a free pass on TWA. That was an airline for you people out there not young. And he said, I'm going around the world. And I thought I was going to Vietnam, but I got rejected from the draft, and so I went with him. And I came back and I wanted to get in the travel business. But 6 months in, working in the travel business, my immediate boss said, let's go start a company. And we did. Two of us. And you might think it was a big risk, but it was really a tiny risk because I wasn't making any money anyway. I lived in an apartment. I was single. It wasn't a big deal, right? When I did Travelocity, I was chief information officer of American Airlines. I was married. I had 2 kids. I had a big house and a mortgage. And I said, I want to go run that company of 12 people and see what I can do.
Right.
That was a much bigger risk. So I think it's a question of what risk am I willing to take when? And am I going to continue to take risks my whole life? Because if you don't, then nothing happens. You're not going to change. And for young people today, they're going to have not 4 jobs, they're going to have 4 careers. The world is going to change so much. So I think being a learner, constantly learning and being willing to take risk are keys to success in the future.
All right, it's a pretty terrifying thing that you just said, and it's really tempting to let it go. But I think for the benefit of the audience who has probably got a huge amount of millennials in it, you said that they're going to have 4 careers, not jobs, careers, right, because the world is changing so much. How can people future-proof themselves from that? Like, what other than just sort of generally a hungry, inquisitive mind? How can they, I know you do a lot to pay attention to oncoming technology trends. What could they be doing to prepare themselves for those changes?
Well, I think technology certainly is going to change everything, but it's a question of thinking about how do I really add value? What am I doing that adds value that looks like it will continue? Because computers are going to get smarter. People have to understand how multi-channel the world is going to be. And what is the piece of it that I can carve out for myself where I'm adding intellectual value or personal relationship value or some unique skill that I have. You're adding value through nutrition. What is it that, as I look at the world, I'm really good at, I'm passionate about, and I think will continue for long enough that I'm going to be around and have a great life.
How much of bringing value do you think is tied to expertise in a field? Like, how can somebody fresh out of college, when I came out of college, I really felt like an expert, but now as I hire people fresh out of college, I realize that was probably wildly delusional. How can somebody just stepping out of college with a mountain of debt, how do they understand the principles of bringing value? Like, what can they do without yet having accumulated expertise to deliver value right now today?
I think a lot of it is a question of passion. I mean, if I look at people, what did you do in those 4 years? Other than, obviously you learned. What did you learn? Do you have a skill? Do I need that skill? But what kind of passion do you bring to that? What else did you do with your life? So I like to look at, what else are you doing, and what else might shape you as a person that I need.
What a wonderfully profound question. So I have made the choice in my life not to have children, so I stopped really chasing the questions of the things you would need to do early on in somebody's life to propel them to be successful from just a mental framework perspective. But it remains like this really powerful concept to me that I know many, many parents watching the show will care deeply about. How can we, if being the intern isn't going to make you a leader, and I really feel like there's so many things to being a leader that are they're ephemeral. You can't touch it. I can't necessarily give you a class that's going to teach it. What are some things that are outside the traditional college internship job that really prepare people to be leaders?
Well, here's a crazy thing. I've given a couple of graduation commencement addresses. One thing I always tell people, and it's not because I'm in the business, is travel. You know, when you get out of school, go spend a year doing what I did. Go around the world. You know, if you can't afford it, you know, the armed forces will take you, a mission will take you. You can find a charitable organization. There are ways to do it.
Right.
But the world is getting so small, and every company today is international. And you know, if I had somebody coming out of school who said, "Hey, here are all the places I've been. Here's what I did. You know, I worked with Doctors Without Borders. I did this. I've been here. I understand Asia." Boy, that's a leg up to me, because they're going to have to understand the rest of the world.
And do you think that can be formalized? Like, is there an organization that you could put together that you would know, okay, this is really going to teach people the things they need? Because that covers exposure, right? Just go do one of these things, you're going to be exposed to this stuff. But is there a way to systematize it? And I ask because in the systems, I think I'll hear from you the key sort of recipes of that.
There might be. I haven't really thought about that. I mean, maybe there's somebody out there doing that, trying to systematize it, but I'm not sure systemization is always a good thing.
Yeah, there's been some really cool studies done on unstructured play and how
it's gone away.
Yeah,
it's gone away. I think that's nuts. I mean, I have friends who have little kids, and everything is structured. And I don't think that's good.
Now, you've done a really good job of creating cultures in your company that uniquely are geared towards innovation. Is there any equivalent of unstructured play that's a part of that?
Well, I think, I think there can be. You know, Google does that very well, right? You have this certain amount of time a year, you can do whatever you want.
So what are the fundamental building blocks of an innovator's mindset? So if I'm not by nature an innovator, would you, and I know you write about following your strengths, so would you just encourage that person, hey, if you're the long, slow development guy, just go be the long, slow development guy? Or are there key principles to innovation that anyone can adopt in their life?
Well, I think, first of all, yes. You know, when I look for an innovator, I look for somebody who wants to change, who's excited about change, who's interested in moving forward. Now, I think that what gets drummed out of people in school is failure. We have to succeed. Everything has to be, you always have to get A's. You can't ever get a B. And you can't innovate without failure. You have to be able to make mistakes. And they're not mistakes, they're learning, and you just move on. And you read the life of Edison and Ford and all these people, all the mistakes they made, all the mistakes that Apple's made, everybody makes them. But big companies don't want to take risk. It's all about the next quarter. It's all about, we can't make a mistake. So I encourage people to prototype things, which is much easier to do today than it used to be, particularly on the web and with 3D printers. And so you fail small, and it's okay, but you find out. And I talk in the book about, you know, kill projects, not people.
Right.
And that doesn't happen in big companies. You kill people. You know, Bob's project failed, Bob's off the track, Bob dead.
Yeah.
You know, and I think if there's anything you do to change a culture, is to say it's okay to fail. Now, if the person fails over and over and over and over, then you know, okay,
at some point
need some training, or you know, they're not in the right place.
You have a pretty rad analogy about business not being like the Olympics; it's more like baseball. Walk people through that.
Yeah, I say innovation is like baseball. Well, in the Olympics, you know, you train from when you're 8 to when you're 18. You have 1 6-minute run down the mountain. You come in 4th. You're out of the medals, probably out of professional skiing, right? In baseball, if you fail 70% of the time, you're awesome. Right? You are awesome. And that's because you get a lot of chances in baseball. You have a lot of innings, you have a lot of at-bats. And that's what we have to understand about innovation is you make a lot of, baseball's a lot of small moves, small parts, keeps moving forward, keep getting better. Sports teams spend forever watching the films of last week's game. Why? To assess blame? No. To ensure victory, to learn, you know, hey, this is why that fumble happened. How are we going to handle this play next time? What are we going to do? But companies, too many times, take the failure and kind of sweep it under the rug along with Bob, you know, and you know, we go on, and it never happened, and they don't learn from it.
Right.
And so I think that's more than anything else, particularly in older organizations, you get ossified. There's a great line, I can't remember where it came from.
Did you say ossified?
Yeah, ossify.
I don't know that
like,
word.
like bones. Ossification of bones is when bones get stiffer and stiffer. Some
Thank
medical
you.
guy will
You've
correct me.
empowered me.
And there was a line that said, this guy asked a CEO, would you today approve the idea that created this company? See, it's an awesome question,
Awesome question.
right? Would you guys
Really a
today
great
say,
question.
we're going to make a bunch of nutrition bars in the garage with a bunch of stuff, and we're going to change the market?
Yeah.
Everybody go like, no, we're not going to do that. That's a crazy idea, right? And when you can't say you would approve it, and maybe it's not you, it's the people, you ask the people who work for you.
Right. The boson layer.
Yeah, the boson. You come in with an idea and it just gets killed.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great question to ask yourself. Would my company now be good enough to do that? Or you talk to people and say, when you come up with a new idea, be careful it's not the idea that got your boss promoted, right? In other words, if you say, this is a really stupid thing we're doing, and that made her a vice president,
Right.
probably not going to get that idea through there, maybe not. But if you could do that as a leader, if you could look down and say, yeah, that's the idea that started this company, but it no longer fits,
Right.
then you're running the right kind of company, I think, that can adapt.
Terry,
it's very hard to do.
How do you teach people to do that?
Well, again, I think you teach them by showing them that you're open to change as a leader, or as these leaders are. That it's okay to. You talked about the boson layer, and the boson layer is the impenetrable layer of middle management that stops good ideas from moving upward.
Right.
Okay, every company has it. They're laughing
I hear
because
some laughs,
they're
yeah.
laughing because they've seen it. It's not middle management's fault, really.
Right.
It's that they look at that and they say, okay, what am I going to get if I approve this new idea and it works? Maybe an attaboy, and maybe a bonus, maybe something. What am I going to get if it fails? I'm going to get sent to Siberia.
Yeah.
So if the leadership above there says, hey, this is Bob's idea, it was great. This is Sally's idea. This is, Ellen's idea, it failed. By the way, we're giving her this new promotion. If they see you care,
Right.
then the boson layer will go away. They'll understand that's what you want. Because there's this quote from the CEO of Panera Bread who says, your wake is larger than you imagine.
Yeah.
As you move through your company, you leave this big wake behind you like a boat. And everybody watches it. And they watch what you say and do. And if you're the person who fires the guy who fails, they learn real fast.
Right.
They're not going to do that. They're going to give you what you want.
Yeah, it is a very, very dangerous game that you know all too well. The reason that we started this show was largely to bring on amazing people like you that could talk to the people here in this company, because, and I think you know this maybe more than most, I have this just overwhelming fear that we will lose the thing that makes us uniquely Quest as we grow and get bigger. Mm-hmm. And I've really, really struggled with how much of the bureaucracy is necessary. And so anybody watching our company from the outside will see us make these silly mistakes. Like we recently sent out an email to our entire base that should have only gone to 300 people, ended up going to 300,000 people. Not a great moment. But
free bars?
Yes. It was exactly free bars. We were trying to solicit feedback. So they of course think it's a ploy, but really it's not a ploy. What it is it's us really being phobic of middle management. It's us really just trying to empower directly anybody we can. Move fast, break things, right? The Facebook ethos.
Yep.
Now the move fast and break things, it works to a certain point, but you said something in your book that really, it was one of those so simple, but it just made me realize how it ends up happening. And you said big companies need bureaucracy so that they can fly. And I was like, that analogy just worked for me, right? This big jumbo jet does not get off the ground unless the bolts are put in the right place, the engines have the right amount of thrust. Like if it's going to take off, there is a certain amount of that infrastructure and all that stuff that everyone hates, but that it's necessary to get off. But you follow it up with some just amazing insights in your book on innovation, which guys, read. Ultra snackable, really, really simple, bite-sized messages, very much geared towards people who want to pick up a book and put it down after they've gotten something powerful that they can go implement. But in there, you really followed up with these concrete things that people can do to create a culture of innovation, not the least of which is the wake that you're talking about, the leading by example and showing people that failure is not punished, but also the things you have to do to create that innovator's mindset. And that's the thing, like, if you guys hear nothing else today, hear that there are these really simple things you can be doing to avoid falling into the calcification trap of, well, we're getting bigger and now there's bureaucracy and so I can't sidestep it. And that is to carry the torch of a culture of innovation yourself within the company, right? And make the demands going upwards that we stay true to our values. And we've put ourselves forcibly in a lucky position of putting our belief system up anywhere and everywhere we can.
That's great.
So that people can point to it and say, if every one of somebody in the leadership is acting like they're in the boson layer, that
call it out.
Exactly. How often have you used the skunkworks mentality? Because I know you spun Travelocity off. You actually took it off American Airlines campus. You went to the strip mall. How often have you found that to be the silver bullet for creating a culture of innovation within a larger company?
With Travelocity, I really thought my key job was to provide air cover for this idea, because I was in the Sabre division and our job was to automate travel agents. So we put computers in all the travel agents around the world. We had 40,000 of them. And then we said, let's do this online thing and let people book on their own. Well, obviously that was antithetical to what we were doing. It's right in the face of the travel agents. But our leadership was strong enough to say we should do it anyway. Somebody's going to do it. We're best equipped. But a lot of people wanted to kill that idea. You can imagine. You know, and I wanted to hire people from the outside who knew nothing about travel. That took 6 months to fight HR, because we always hire from the inside first. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. We kept our budget separate, so our money was kept way up at the top, because marketing would have stolen all our money if we were in marketing for a Super Bowl ad or something. It never would have gotten done. And then we physically moved to another place. We got out of the building. We didn't have to wear suits anymore. That's a long time ago. And those were really important things for it to grow.
Yeah, for sure. I want to go back to what you were just saying about unstructured play as it relates to the way that you learn. So you're a voracious reader, but you said that that's very unstructured. Even before you said that, one of the questions I wanted to ask you was around how you learn. I'm really, really fascinated by people that have just taken in a huge swath of knowledge, and to really quickly sort of recap your career, you go and get a degree in history, but then you have this amazing trip that you take post-grad and realize, nope, I've fallen in love with travel. What I really want to do is be in the travel industry, much to your father's chagrin, if I'm not mistaken. You become a travel agent, starting very early, if we're still sending things by telegrams. That's pretty impressive.
1970,
and then spend 24, 25 years at American Airlines, which is pretty big corporation at that point, very long time. One would expect you to be somewhat
ossified?
Yes, thank you. Ossified indeed. But you don't, and you become part of the Travelocity, and then hit this really entrepreneurial patch, going from Travelocity to Kayak.com, having 2 huge successes. So in all of that, what has been that unstructured learning process that you use to make sure that you have visibility into things coming from domains outside your own area of expertise? Well,
when I was in the travel agency, one of the things that occurred to me was computers were just starting to be used. We could get a leg up on all our competition if we computerized early. And my computer in college was punch cards. It was not possible. So I started doing that, and I started teaching myself about it. And then we got this mini computer, and I got really into that. It was fascinating to me. I got to the point in the travel agency where I thought I'd learned all I could, and the guy who owned the computer system we were using offered me a job in sales. And so I said, okay, and I jumped. And I was there in sales for a short period of time, and he said, boy, you really understand products. Could you run all the programmers. I said, I don't know anything about that. And he said, come on. So I did that, and then very shortly we sold that company to American Airlines. Now here's where it gets interesting for me, and this had to do with my boss, and it's something you might do. So I became president of this mini computer division as we sold the company. And I was doing that for, I don't know, a year or two, and my boss said, I want to go put you in charge of 500 programmers. I said, I don't know a thing about that. He said, you'll do fine. And I'm doing that for a year and a half, and my boss says, I want you to go run computer operations. Well, that was 2,000 people, a budget of $500 million.
Whoa.
It was, all about 99.9999. We ran 40 airlines in our computer system. So that thing goes down, the world stops.
Right.
That's when I lost my hair. But it was a totally different job. It was all about reliability, maintainability, quality, but at the same time, there was a big creative piece. How do we move into the future? What is this thing called the internet?
Right.
So, and then, 2 years later, he said, well, why don't you, we need a CIO, become CIO and kind of be over the top of this thing. I think, yes, I'm a voracious reader and I like to learn, but forcing people into different things, he forced me to go do those things. I probably wouldn't have self-selected those. They weren't the jobs that I necessarily wanted, but I found in each one, what can I do? What can I add? How can I add value here? I started a marketing guy.
Right.
I think it's very important to force people to learn. I tell a story in the book about my CMO at Travelocity just said the CRM system sucks. It's a terrible CRM. It's never going to work. IT is terrible. I said, good. You now own the CRM system. You own the programmers. You own the analysts. It's yours. And he's like, holy crap. But it worked. In two reasons. One, he was focused on it, but two, he had to serve the whole company. And he's now CEO. I think that was a helpful learning experience to turn him into a broader person than just being a CMO.
It's interesting because I think in the world that we live in today, and I'm going to project bias here for sure, and it may not serve me, and so I will immediately turn it off if it isn't a useful thought. But this is how I think of it now, and to my millennials, I aim this all at you. I would actually be worried to do that. I would be worried that they would leave. That if I put them in a position where they couldn't express their talents, the things that they want to build, the skill set that they want to acquire, that they would leave. But if I had to point, and I obviously don't know your story nearly as well as you do, but if I had to point to things that were very helpful for you, it seems to me that breadth of knowledge, right? So if you just follow your training doesn't make sense with your first job. Your first job very quickly morphs into technology, and the two really had nothing to do with each other than being in the same industry. And on it goes. And when we get to Watson and what you're doing now, you have just radically transformed all the time. And it's been this constant, I wrote down that you've had a really adventurous career. And I think, when you look at organisms, I don't know if this is going to be random, I will bring it all back together. People, stick with me. If you take 10 women, and you give them 10 shirts each, and they have been worn by different guys, so each t-shirt's worn by a different guy, and you tell the women, hey, rank these shirts in order of preference. They smell and they're like, I don't understand why I'm doing this. Sure, this one's number 1, this is a 3, this one's 2, and they go through, and they will be almost exactly in order of genetic diversity. So the person who is most like them will be 10, because that's bad news, right? You don't want people who are genetically like you, because your offspring will be less likely to survive. The people who are most dislike you will be number 1, second least likely will be number 2. There is something about that cross-pollination, both from an evolutionary standpoint and from an intellectual standpoint. That was the thing that really jumped out at me as I was going through your story, is something so incredibly profound. And the sticking point for me is I don't know how to give that gift, right? I don't know how to get Ian to want that, to go do something completely different. And above my head in my office is a very simple sign. I've talked about it before. It says II equals IO. Ideas in equal ideas out. I'm not worried about whether or not there's another new thought to be thought of. Maybe truly every original thought has already been thought. I'm fine with that. because not every unique connection has been made. And there are unique connections between diverse and very old ideas that have yet to be put together. And each one of us is just weird enough to put different connections together, right? And then it becomes a question of what are you going to do with the unique connections that only you will ever bring to this world, because you are also part of a time, right? So in this time, with what's happening in technology right now, at this moment, with the cultural forces that we have applied to us at this moment, with your unique makeup, you will make these unique connections. But only if you're introduced to these ideas. And when people stay in this bubble and they hide and they hunker down, they get their job done, they don't get that cross-pollination that I think your career has had, that you've clearly put other people in the position to get. Do I need to discard that idea, or am I onto something?
No, I mean, look, I'm not quite sure where the 10 t-shirts go, but the...
Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah.
You're not sure, are you? Basically, diversity. Diversity. People need diversity.
Is, well, two points. First of all, you know, it depends on what Ian wants eventually.
Yep.
If Ian wants your job, you know, you have to talk to Ian and say, look, you know, you're running this, and how are you going to run the whole company if that's all you know?
Right.
You've got to change. You've got to be open to it. And I know you've had your whole life program since, you know, your mother had play dates in the book, but this is a different game here. And I've got to see how you perform doing different tasks if you're going to move up. Do you want to do that?
What if
that's fine. If
do you still think, though, that he'd benefit from totally different perspectives from outside of his industry?
I think he would anyway, in terms of his ability to do his job and be open to change. Because otherwise, you know, he'll still be doing it 20 years from now the same way. It's the same reason you should hire people and surround yourself with people, as you just went in your genetic study, who aren't like you. People who will challenge you. William Wrigley has a quote that says, if two people in business always agree, one of them is irrelevant.
Yeah, totally agree.
You don't want that. You want people who will push you. You want people to debate you. Now, I don't want people who like debate me, and we make a decision, and they come back again and debate it, and they never... Those people can leave.
Right.
You know, you got to be able to move on when somebody makes a decision. But I'm happy to have a debate, an argument, a fight, any of it. Let's be passionate about our ideals and argue about them and see where we go. So, you know, you get into that mentoring role where you say, how far am I going to push this person, and where do I want to push them? And that's hard. It's tough. And you always, you know, as a leader think, well, I could do that. I could do it better than she could do it. But you can't. You got to let them do it themselves. But if you give them enough experiences, hopefully they'll be well-rounded enough to do it themselves. And if you find that they fail as you move them around, then you either put them back where they were, or say, you know, maybe you'd be better off doing it somewhere else.
Right. Kill the idea, not the person.
Yeah.
So you talked earlier about bringing people into the future. Clearly, everything you've touched has always been sort of the most futuristic thing of that moment. What is it about the future that excites you right now?
Well, you know, as I look at, if I look at travel, of course, I'm fascinated by cognitive computing and what's that going to do, and can we really help people have better adventures and more fun.
For people that don't know what it is.
This is a computer that understands words, and it understands the meaning of words. So it knows the difference between fall of season and fall down. It knows a family is a group of people, that Italy is a country. Right. And it knows how to relate those words together into meaning and derive meaning from them. What does this document actually mean? And what we're struggling with at Wayblazer is, can we get the web to give advice? Because
accidentally, right? Like, so that Watson is going and pulling all this data and turning it into advice.
Yes, because search gives you clues, but it doesn't give you advice.
Right.
And people are struggling on the web to get advice. There were 36,000 travel agents in the United States before we started Travelocity. There are about 18,000 left, and about 10,000 of those are mostly business travel. So the 8,000 who are left are people who actually can help you get an experience. They give advice. And actually, my daughter, of all things, is a high-end travel agent in Beverly Hills. I worked my whole life to put them out of business, and that's what she turned out to be. So with Watson, maybe we can actually say, you need to go to Ostia or wherever. Can we do? I think that's going to be fascinating to see. Can we augment the human mind? Because we're creating way too much data for anyone to absorb. That's why doctors find this so useful, is that a doctor can't read the 1,000 papers a year that come out in their specialty. So Watson does that. And then the doctor, in the end, makes the decision with the computer. I think there are going to be lots of places where we have huge breakthroughs in healthcare and many other places as these machines learn to give advice and to take all these data and hopefully move society forward.
Well, then to that, what does a life on this planet very well lived look like to you?
Oh my gosh. I've learned a lot, and I think I've helped a bunch of people. I think if you ask me, I'll tell the reverse. Somebody said, do you have any regrets about kayak? And I said, yeah. We went public with 200 people. And they said, what's wrong with that? That creates a tremendous amount of value for Wall Street. And I say, sure. But why didn't we go? I wish we'd gone public with 100,000 people.
Right.
Because I think there's a huge number of people in this country who need good employment. We need to create more jobs for people. And so I think I've done that. I have 2 wonderful kids. One's a travel agent. That's a little strange, but my son is sold his first company when he was 18.
Wow.
Started a video game with a bunch of guys and sold it for $300,000.
Wow.
10 guys quit, left college, went worked in the game industry, came back, finished college. Then he went to work for Sony and EA, and now he's just started his own game company. And what's cool, it's here in LA, is that today you can start a company with 4 guys, right, and raise the money on Kickstarter, and hire everybody else and create some value,
cool.
which you could never do before. So I'm happy that he's learned that, and that's part of a life well lived.
Awesome. Terry, thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
All right, my pleasure.
Thanks. It was amazing. Where can these guys find you?
You can find me at tbjones.com, which is a lousy URL, but the only one you can get when you're a Jones, right?
Everybody watching, I hope you guys paid attention to this episode as closely as I did. I'm going to echo the last thing that he said, which hit me really, really hard. And if you read his book on innovation, you will understand why. And he said, have a hard summer. I can't tell you, as cheesy as it sounds, as many times as you will hear that hard work, painful things build character, it really does. And doing things the easy way is not always the right way, but getting the experiences that you need in life. And if you look closely at this man's career trajectory, it is utterly breathtaking. The variety of things that he's had in his life, from true corporate America to hyper entrepreneurial organizations. He's been part of 10 startups. He's built several multi-billion-dollar companies. It's absolutely crazy and astonishing. It is well worth digging into more so that you can figure out what you need to do in your own life to innovate. Don't worry about whether there are unique ideas to think of. Just focus on making those unique connections. Focus on bringing value to people, which is something you will hear echoed in his work over and over and over. How to build a mindset that is focused on delivering value, and the tips and techniques that you'll need to do that. It will change everything about your life when you focus over to bringing value to people, to keeping your mind as fresh as this man. It drives me crazy when people say that genius is a young man's game. It is very much for anybody. So everybody, please dig into his world. You will find it very rewarding. It is a weekly podcast, so if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. If you're listening to this on Stitcher, if you got it on iTunes, be sure to put me on 2X because I sound a lot brighter. And Lord knows I love it, getting the information as fast as you can. Guys, so please come back, check us out next week. Until then, my friends, be legendary. Take care. Thank you again so much for coming on. It was absolutely fantastic.
That was great.
Thank you.